Oh, you can be, because I just got over here. Y'all can be seated. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay, I'm hoping this comes out good. I may end up upsetting a few people, and people may not just like what I have to say, but it wasn't me. God gave me this message, not, of course, I can't do nothing on my own accord. But we're going to discuss two different categories of people. People in recovery. A lot of people do not realize that when you're in recovery, there's differences. There's people actually in recovery, and there's people that they're sober. And then when it comes to being a Christian, there's two different types of Christians too. The ones that they know God. And then there's ones that know God and follow God, walk every day of their life is, So those are two different peoples, and each one of these types of people, the person in sobriety that, they're just sober, is just like the Christian that, I know God. No, that's it. So the similarities, yeah, that's between the sober person that just is sober, they're considered a dry drunk. Very bitter people. Just like a Christian that they know God. And they're going to be bitter as well. I mean, I'm not saying that they're all like this, but 9 times out of 10, they're just bitter. Very, very angry still. And then you got the person in recovery that is in recovery. They are working on it every day. It's just like the person that's a Christian that knows God, walks with God, does all this. Those two different types of people, they surrender every day. I mean, I don't know about anybody else. I do. Every morning I wake up, I'm like, God, it's your day. It's not mine, it's yours. I want to, you tell me. Just like in recovery, if you're working on recovery, you're going to surrender every day. You're going to wake up and you're going to be like, I don't want this no more. And that's just like, giving it, you're going to give it to God whether you're in sobriety or you're not. And then the person that is just sober, they're not working on anything. They just want the title of, I'm sober. They're not, because I can't say it's for myself, because when I got into using, it was because I liked how I felt. I liked what it was made, I lost weight. I was more personable. I was more sociable. I liked how it made me feel. And a lot of people in addiction, they are dealing with some type of trauma. And that's why they use, to cover up that pain and hurt. So when you start working on in recovery, you're going to work on these problems. You're going to work on these issues. Some people go to a rehab, then they start working on things. But with me, I really didn't have no trauma. I mean, I had the typical, childhood, issues, and stuff, but I was never abused. I wasn't none of that. So I had to work on, when I started recovery, building the relationships back up. And that is all about being a Christian too, is relationship. If you know God, so these things go hand in hand, If you're in recovery, you're going to eventually get to know God. But if you just stay a dry drunk, you're not really going to care. You're not going to work on any underlying issues. You're not going to, and when you're sitting there, you're like, well, and the difference between all this is action over effort. Because it takes a lot of effort to have the persona of, I'm sober, I'm doing this, I'm doing it, It takes a lot of effort doing that, but it shows the action of actually doing all this. Because if you are working on it, people's going to see the fruit. That's what I was thinking of, the fruit. The fruit that comes about all this. Just like, and it goes, like I said, hand in hand. Recovery and Christianity is hand in hand, So when you're a Christian's following God, people is going to look at you. if you are actually living like the good book says you're supposed to live. People is going to notice it. But if you're just, I know him. And it states over 100 times in the Bible, not so much a relationship, because that's what I'm basing it as, a relationship with Jesus and God, But it's along the lines of the same thing. Fellowship, knowing, trusting. But then when you just think that you can say, I know him, that's where I'm going. No, sorry. But it says, and I think Matthew, was it Matthew, Kayla? Matthew, right? Yeah. Okay. Jesus says, you call me Lord of Lords. Turn away from me because you don't know me. And I think different versions says iniquity. Some of them say your annuities or something, So different versions say, you call me your Lord, but you don't know me. That don't mean you're going to heaven just because you say you know Jesus. And it states right in the Bible. That's not a, I'm going to say I know him and I'm going to heaven. No, sorry. I'm not God, but I can only imagine how it goes when you go, up in judgment. God's sitting there with the book, and here comes Jesus from the backside, and he's like, no, Dad, no. They may act like they know me, but they don't know me. And God's going to say, it's good doodle. And that's how I feel that it's going. I'm not saying that's how it happens, but that is how I take that when it says, you call me Lord of Lords, and you don't know me, so turn away from me. And it says in, I can't remember the other one, but it's also saying that, you want to be a fig tree, you want to get thrown in the fire. And for me, that's the same thing. If you want, you say you know me, but you're not having a relationship with me, so you're not bearing no fruit, you're not doing any of this. So what makes you any better than somebody that is actually working on this and having a relationship with me? How can I give you the same effect, as that? Because the people that are doing the action and actually doing the work, and it's just like in recovery, people is going to see that you are changing. That is me doing that. I'm so sorry. Did you all hear it? That was me. I'm sorry. I was moving my. It was me. I noticed it when I was clicking my hand. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm so nervous today. I've had a lot of coffee. I had me a big old latte before I come. That's two today. But yeah, so that is what I'm trying to, I was trying to figure out how I was going to say this and not make somebody mad, saying that you can be sober. I did it again. But you can be sober and work on yourself and improve yourself. But if you just want the title of being sober, then you're not improving yourself at all. Yeah, you're sober. You're going to live a little longer. But are you willing to be sober and, still have people look at you like they're not trying to improve themselves? Because I know with me, I had to repair a lot of relationships. And, my sister, my son, my nieces, all kinds of people. I had to repair those relationships that I had screwed up. But if I just chose to be sober, I wouldn't have none of this back. I wouldn't have got anything back that I had lost. And since I chose to work on myself, to be in recovery and actually do what's supposed to be done, I was able to find God. I was actually able to build up that relationship back with God. And then I got to learning the difference between someone that says they know God and they follow God. So that's what I was trying to figure out how I was going to, because I think I was sitting here a couple Wednesdays ago when God told me he was giving me these different types of people. And I'm like, what do you want me to do with that, God? And he's like, So he just slowly, has helped me. And I don't have too many scriptures. I just know that it's in over 100 times in the Bible stating that we should have fellowship, a relationship, and, walk with God. But if it wasn't that important, would it be in the Bible over 100 times? No, because The one that where if you don't follow God, what's going to happen to you? It's not in there that often. But so just think that if you're in recovery, you have to work on yourself, and that means to get a sponsor, start going to meetings, do the 12 steps, figure out, what the trauma was, because I think I was talking to somebody the other day. Everybody wants these doors shut from their past. They want to shut all these doors, but they don't want to deal with the underlying trauma behind those doors. And if you don't deal with those traumas, that just gives the enemy even more leverage to open those doors and come right on in. And so I would say, I don't know the statistics, but I would say that's where a lot of your relapses come from, because they're not working on them issues. And so when you work on those issues, yeah, it's tough. I don't think anybody said recovery is easy. If it was easy, I'm pretty sure a lot of more people would do it, because it is hard. It's just like being a Christian. It's hard. It is hard work. Living, and I can't say I'm the best Christian, I'm the best person in recovery, because I can do things and say things that out of pocket that shouldn't be said of a Christian person, and then sometimes it just comes out of my mouth, And so I try, and that's all we can do is try. It's not perfect. You're never going to be perfect. And so when you're working on yourself, it's honesty, not perfection, honesty. And that's the whole point of recovery. When you get into recovery, if you can't be honest, it's not going to work, because you're not going to be able to work on them traumas. I've dealt with, a lot of people that didn't want to be honest, and that's when they back up more. When you're trying to get them to be honest and work on themselves, that's when they don't want it, and so they just back up further and further, and so you can't push them. When they're ready to be honest, and that's the whole thing with some person in recovery, the type of person in recovery, and a Christian, the true Christian, it is, their action. It is what they do, what they say. Because a person that is a Christian, a true follower of God, you're going to work on yourself. You're going to learn, how to be a good person. Because if you just say you know God and you don't, you're still bitter. You're not working on nothing. You're not wanting to change. You're still wanting to live like the world. And yeah, that's hard to do, because we live in the world, but we don't have to act like the world. And so, like I said, I don't watch. I can honestly say I don't listen to secular music no more. If I'm scrolling, I do scroll on TikTok. I doom scroll. And if I come across a video that seems nasty, cussing a lot, I scroll right past it. So that I have noticed. So that means I've worked on myself. I barely cuss anymore. Every once in a while, a word comes out. But, yeah, every once in a while. But the F-bomb don't come out like it used to. That I can admit to. I don't, So that part of me has changed. And then where'd that go? I know, I just lost my wording, Jonathan. Yeah, I need somebody to. But so when, that's like, I've been dealing with some health issues. And so if I wasn't working on myself, I'd just be like, okay, it is what it is. No, I'm praying every day for healing now. And that's because I know God. I know what He can do. I'm praying for my vision to be restored, and I feel it. You guys, I feel it. It's going to happen. And then I went and I had MRIs done yesterday, not concerned about it, and I know as soon as I get those results, I know what my God can do, because I have that relationship with Him now. And I used to be one of these people that's like, yeah, I know, there might be a God, there might not be a God, But was that good enough for me to, if something would have happened to me while I was in my addiction, if something would have, happened, where would I have went? Because I don't think I knew God. I may have said I knew God, but I don't think I would have went to heaven. So I wouldn't have went to the kingdom. I wouldn't have known the beauty of it all. And that's why I said something the other day about just crying for no reason, crying over a song, crying when I'm praying in the Spirit. And that is beautiful because I know who God is now. And that is how being a true Christian should feel. Just crying and being happy, not a sad cry, but cry because you are in the presence of God. You feel Him. So that's the beautiful thing. And now if you just say, I know Him, you'll never know that feeling of how wonderful that is. How wonderful it is to wake up knowing that He's the reason you woke up. He's the reason you have breath in your lungs. And, and a person that says they don't know the true feeling of that because they just say it for the persona. And if that's what you're going for, a persona, that's good for you. But I don't want just a persona. I want the God feeling. I want to know that I've got a mansion up there. I really don't want a mansion, but, if that's what He gives me. A mansion's too big for me. And then when you're in recovery, wake up every day knowing I got a roof over my head. I got coffee in my refrigerator. I got coffee, I've got all this food in my refrigerator, air conditioning, I've got all that. And if I was just sober, I wouldn't know the benefits of that because I would have never got it back because I was just sober, using that persona. Because that is the whole thing, effort over action. Because recovery and Christianity is, it's an action process. Because you have to surrender daily. Talk to God. If you are struggling, talk to somebody. Don't let it live in your head rent-free. I think I say this all the time because, you live up there rent-free. It's not really a good thing. Because squatters, everyone knows how squatters are. They got to get eviction notices now. And if that's what something living in your head rent free is like, it's like a squatter that you got to get an eviction notice for. Take them to court. And so when you're doing all this, and I don't want to be bitter. I don't. And I know that when I didn't know God, but I was still the first year of my recovery, I was just sober. So I can relate to all sides of these. Because when I was just sober, living on the streets, crying constantly, couldn't wait to get my diversion thing done because I was ready. I was ready to go back out there because I didn't like how I was at that point in time because I was just sober. And then if we went somewhere and somebody prayed for me, I'd cry, but I didn't believe. I knew, but I always said there was a heaven and a hell. So I knew there was something, there was a creation. So I knew there was God. I knew there was God. But did I believe in Him? But I was so bitter the first year of my recovery, crying. And I would always say, I thought they was going to be different. You get sober, you're going to change. But I wasn't changing. I was staying the same way. And then when I got into recovery, that's when things started changing. And now I'm loving life. Never thought I could, but I am happy as could be now. I don't worry about, and I know it's sad. I used to still worry about things, things aren't going right. Now I don't even worry anymore. It's like, nah, it'll be all right. God's got me. When I went to the hospital last October, when I found out that they diagnosed me with MS, I was smiling, and that nurse was like, I said, my God's bigger. My God's bigger than the blindness. My God's bigger than the MS. My God's bigger than the blood pressure that's going through the roof. And just like in recovery, all that is so much bigger than just being sober, because I loved being able to work on myself, to repair relationships, to get new relationships, because I would have never met you all if I wouldn't have started working on myself and surrender, and actually not allowing my sister to take me to a homeless shelter in Carrollton, Kentucky, because that's where I was headed. And so that's the big thing with recovery and Christianity. You have to surrender, and don't be afraid to work on yourself. It's humbling when this is how I used to be, and it's, once you work on all that, it's great. And just remember that, Jesus don't want you just knowing him. He wants you having that relationship and working on yourself. You can't just, he's my Lord. No, it's a difference between him being your Lord and Savior. He can't, he needs to be both and not just one. And, when you start reading the Bible, it'll start clicking more. And, you'll realize that, you'll be a lot happier. And when you work on yourself, and, you'll have that foundation that you need. Because once you get that foundation with, God, the foundation in recovery is just that much easier. Because, a lot of people say you can be in recovery without God. You can. Is it better with God? Yes. And that was I don't even know. Just remember, surrender every day. And when you're struggling, there's always people to reach out to. Talk to God first and foremost. He will, put the right people in your path. You will know that recovery is more than just staying sober. But start with working on yourself, because they always say recovery isn't a I program, it's a we program, but it's a very selfish program. Because your first year of recovery, I always said that was the most selfish thing ever. And so, sorry, my feet's hurting. I know, I've been in these shoes all day. I've been running around all day. But so that's, when you start working on yourself, you'll realize there's a lot of things that you did not know, about yourself. And then, because God will reveal these things to you. And that's the whole thing about, you can work on your walk with God at the same time you're working on your recovery, your first part of recovery. And God will just slowly reveal these things to you, things that you didn't remember. So that is the whole thing with, these 4 types of people. Not a lot of people know that the person in recovery is the same person as a real Christian walking with God, as a dry drunk is just a person that knows God. So, you can choose, do I want to be bitter, or do I want to be happy? Do I want to know, or do I just want to say I know my Father, or do I want to know my Father? Because they may be the same words, but they're 2 different meanings. When you know and you know. But I think that's it. I'm telling you what, my meetings are so slow. But I'm pretty sure AJ or Kayla's got something.
I agree with everything she said. And I agree, not everybody that's sober is in recovery. If you're in recovery, you are persistently doing things to better yourself more than just the drugs and alcohol. The drugs and alcohol were a symptom of the real problem. So if you quit the drugs and alcohol, you're just running around here with a real problem. You're just not getting high or drunk. But with it being said, some people are going to look at me weird, but how I say that not everybody that's sober is in recovery, in my opinion, I can honestly say that not everybody truly in recovery is sober. I do believe that somebody could be truly in recovery working on themselves, and they go out there and they get drunk, and then they call their sponsor, they call their pastor, they show up at a meeting and they say, I messed up. going and getting drunk didn't take you out of recovery. So being sober isn't the main thing to put you in recovery. In recovery, you will stop drinking, you will stop getting high, but there are people in recovery trying to better themselves that are still using, that are still drinking. And how you say, you know, people not in recovery are in recovery. It's the same thing how you talked about Christians, and not everybody that says they're a Christian really is. Not everybody that you think really is. Not every person that you go to church with really is. When the day goes and we're all in heaven, there's going to be some people you thought was going to be there that's not there. There's people that come to church for 30, 40 years, and they're not going to make it. And the Word talks about that, says you can tell them by their fruit. By their fruit. I know somebody that's, I'm not going to name names, everybody here knows the person, but they're pretty close to me. And they come to church sometimes, a lot of times, they've been more. But you can go to them for advice, and they will give you solid, sound, scriptural advice. But when you look at your life, it's the same way it was 40 years ago. Nothing's changed. There's no fruit. So though they've been in church, they've heard the Word, they know it, they can help you, they can tell you all about it, they don't really know Christ. They just know of Him. Even though the advice they can give you is solid in the Word, you can prove what they said in the Word, but they don't really know Him. It's the relationship, to learn the relationship with Him. I don't care. I definitely think that you should read the Word, but I don't care if you start with just praying every day, praying and listening. You'll eventually feel convicted to read the Word, but reading the Word and praying, that's going to develop the relationship. Coming to church, hearing it, going out there, doing what you want is not it. And in my opinion, those are the people that might not make it. I'm not a judge to say who's going to make it or not, but I know for me, to my understanding, it's more about a relationship. You could know the Word. You could quote this book from Genesis to Revelations, frontwards and backwards, but if you don't have that relationship, it doesn't matter what you know. None of that matters if you don't have that relationship. And that relationship, I don't think that getting that relationship with Christ, I think you can tell people that have a relationship with Christ if you look at their relationships with other people. Because I know me in the past, I've believed in Christ, knew of Christ since about 12, you know what I mean? But it was like I was always, sometimes I was serious, sometimes I was faking it, but I was still doing what I was very wishy-washy in that relationship. And when I look back at relationships that I had, whether they were romantic or even friendships, they were wishy-washy. Sometimes the people were there and everything was good, but then they'd be gone. Sometimes my relationships with people directly reflected the relationship that I was seeking with God. And then when I got serious about the relationship with God, I can say today I have less people close to me than what I used to, but the people close to me is way better relationships than I've ever had in my life. The one with my wife is better than any that I ever had. I still don't talk a lot of times, but I know when I do, I can. And I can tell you right now, Reggie, he's my uncle, he's my pastor, but when I really look at it, he's probably also my best friend. I mean, and though I don't have all these people that I'm friends with, hanging out with all the time like I did at one time, the quality of the relationships that I have are better than what I ever had. And I don't think I would have quality relationships right now until I understood the relationship with Him.
I'm Kayla. I'm a grateful believer.
Hi, Kayla.
Hi. So whenever you were talking about how some people just know of God and they don't really know God, it made me think of if somebody came in, you know, this is how would God feel? How does it make God feel? Sorry, he wants the mic. How does it make God feel when people say that they know Him and they really don't? How would you feel if somebody came into the church and just say their name's Billy, and Billy, they come up to you, they say hi, and they never speak to you again. And then later you hear them, telling somebody else, well, Stephanie's my best friend. No, Stephanie's not. You don't really know Stephanie. You know of Stephanie, and that's it. So that's got to be how God feels about that when other people don't have a relationship with him. You got quiet.
Give him the Bible and the microphone and prop him up.
Yeah.
He wants the baby.
Yeah, sorry. He's heavy.
Yes, he is. He's a grown
No,
boy.
ain't got nothing.